Man, ain't nothing like riding your e-bike when you're feeling a little down or certain about something to get your mind off things. What it do, E-World, crisscrossing wires. And today, whether or not some people think I'm qualified to do so or not, I'm going to give you guys some high-speed tips. And yeah, this is from stuff that I've learned just in the little bit of time that I've been doing this e-biking thing. And we got about 1.5 years up under our belt. And honestly, I think we've done pretty well for our first 1.5 years. And anyway, you stand by for this next year. But anyway, high speed, there's several little tricks and tips you can do when it comes to high speed. First of all, before you even get started, one thing you need to do is make sure you got proper air pressure in your tires. Your tires should be pretty much close to that maximum air pressure. You're definitely not going to achieve any high top speeds if you're riding on low tires. Make no mistake about it. Your tires should be you know, pretty firm and as hard as possible. And specifically, if you're doing high speed, you really shouldn't have any knobbies on your tires, man. Knobbies aren't great for high speed. For one thing, they introduce a lot of improper wheel balance, so you're going to get a lot of shimmy and shaking at high speed with knobbies. And they're just not built for high speed on the road. Okay, right? So get you some type of dual sport or street tire. All right. The next thing is kind of related to the same thing, proper wheel balancing. People discuss all the time about you know, when they get to high speeds, their bikes seem squirrely. You know, that's because your tires are way out of balance. And there's a few things that people don't think about when it comes to wheel balance. And you know, like some people have reflectors in their wheels, lights in their wheels, all sorts of things that are going to introduce some, you know, improper balancing at high speed. Now if you got a big old reflector in your wheel, just imagine that, you know, high RPMs, that simple reflector is going to throw your wheels off balance. You may not notice it at low speeds, but when you get up around 60 miles an hour, that's when all the fun begins as far as, you know, improper wheel balancing. All right, so, you know, you got reflectors and all that kind of stuff in your wheels, you may want to take them out. All right, the next thing is field weakening. Field weakening plays a large role in high speed. I had to learn that the hard way. You know, when I was trying to do this 100-mile-per-hour challenge in the beginning, you know, I knew I had enough power to do it. However, well, I knew I had enough torque, however, you know, and that comes from high current. But when it comes to doing high speed, voltage plays a significant factor at high speeds. All right, and I mean, this is something I knew, but I was accepting the challenge of doing this at 72 volts. Now we all know you can increase your voltage and achieve high speed. That's the first thing. So if you want to run a high voltage system, you will get a lot of higher speeds than on 72 volts. Okay, so but that's the easy way to do it. You know what I'm saying? You could build yourself a 108, 120 volt system, and yeah, you're going to achieve some high speed. Now, how fast you get to those top speeds may not be what you think, you know, because you need a lot of current for that. So that's why I focused on high current and stayed at 72 volts, because I was trying to build a race bike, and people unfortunately always base how fast the bike is on your top speed. How fast is your bike? And people give their top speed. That's not how fast your bike is. If somebody say how fast your bike is, you should be giving them a distance and time info, you know, like 0 to 60 in 4 or 5 seconds, or quarter mile in 14, 15 seconds. Okay, that's how fast your bike is, not its top speed. Because let me tell you, there can be a lot of bikes with high top speeds but lose a race to a high torque bike, or a bike set up, you know, with high current, or a good gear ratio that will get them quick acceleration, or smaller tires. That's another thing, tire size when it comes to high speeds. Okay, the bigger the tire you have, the easier to reach high top speeds. However, big tires are going to limit the quickness in which you get to a top speed. You know, although big tires are easier to get high speed, that's going to slow your acceleration down. Now, smaller tires are the opposite, have quick acceleration but low top speeds. So guys out there that go from 19s down to those little moto tires, they're going to notice that they're going to lose like 6-7 miles per hour on the top end. All right, so tire size means a lot. That's just like your gear ratio. If you're on a Sur-Ron or a mid-drive, you know that the bigger the front sprocket and the smaller the back sprocket, the more top end you're going to have, but the less torque you're going to have. So you want more torque, it's the reverse on your gear ratio. Smaller sprocket up front, larger sprocket in the rear. And you know, you got to play with those sprocket sizes and all that to get the right combination you want, where you getting good top end and acceleration. And you know, that's a lot of trial and error. But now back to the field weakening, what I was talking about. Now what I've learned is that, you know, a lot of times when people set up their field weakening, they just turn it up to the max. you know, and that's not the right thing to do. Because for one, as I've told people in other videos, field weakening requires its own amps. Meaning, if you have a controller, 150 amp controller, and you turn that up to its max 150 amps, and you know that's regulating your phase amps and your DC line amps that's pulling from your battery, that's 150 amps as far as your output power to your motor. All right, now if you have your field weakening set at 50 amps, that's an additional 50 amps that on top of your 150 amps of output power. So that's 200 amps. Most batteries with stock BMSs, or you know, most average manufactured batteries come with 150 amp BMS. So already you're exceeded your BMS limit right there with setting your DC line amps at 150 and your phase and your field weakening at 50. That's 200 amps. You're not going to achieve field weakening with 150 amp BMS and 150 amp battery, first of all. All right, so you're going to have to get your battery power constraints right. You know, either you're going to need a bypass battery, you're going to need a larger BMS, and you're going to need a battery with cells capable of delivering that power. Just because you have a big BMS, if you got a 10P pack with 10 amp cells, that's 100 amps all day long. I don't care what BMS you put on there, what controller you put on there, you're not going to extract any more amps out of those batteries. I mean, they may go beyond that 10 amps, but then, you know, then you are subject to damaging your cells, or, you know, causing thermal runaway. You know, cells working way too hard than they should, and those cells are going to overheat, catch fire, and you know, you see guys bike smoking because they got big controllers on bikes with stock batteries, bypass BMSs, and you know, a battery that's capable of 150 amps, but they got their controller turned up to 300 amps, go on a 30-minute group ride, and they're haul assing the whole time, and when they stop, their bike catches on fire, and they don't know why. Well, that's because you was trying to extract 300 amps from a 150 amp battery. All right, so first of all, your power constraints, you know, you gotta have enough amps to do whatever that is you're trying to do. All right, now like I said, back to that field weakening. So if you only got a 150 amp battery, obviously you're not going to do 150 DC line amps and 50 field weakening amps at the same time. So you're going to have to dial back on those line amps. All right, now that is going to decrease your acceleration by turning those amps back. But if you want higher top speed and you want that field weakening to work, you're going to have to turn those DC line amps back just to get some field weakening. Now that's if you, all right, say then for example, you turn that back to 100 amps, DC line amps, then you can run your field weakening at 50 amps. That's 150 amps altogether, not exceeding the output of your battery. And not only that, you have to be able to achieve that all while keeping your voltage above nominal. All right, meaning if you start off with a fully charged battery at 84 volts and you don't have a high discharge battery, a battery that can produce a lot of amps, all right, and you attempt to run your power at a level that when you full throttle, your voltage snatches all the way back from 84 volts down to 70 volts, you aren't going to have any field weakening. All right, like I said before, field weakening requires a certain amount of voltage to initiate. If you take off full throttle and your voltage snatches way back, I guarantee you your field weakening is never going to initiate. All right, now you may be able to take off slow and gradually build up speed without having a lot of voltage sag, and if you can keep your voltage above 72 volts, your field weakening will initiate. However, make sure you turn your field weakening back a bit. Don't turn it up to its max. Don't turn it up to 50 amps if you only got a 150 amp battery. Try something like 15 amps or 20 amps of field weakening. Start off with a smaller amount of field weakening, all right? But first of all, just so you know, the only way you're going to know if your field weakening is actually working is to do a top speed run with no field weakening, all right? And let's say you do a top speed run with no field weakening on 72 volts, 100 amp controller, and let's say you get up to 60 miles an hour, and you can't get above that 60 miles an hour, all right? When you achieve field weakening, you will get past that 60 miles per hour number, all right? That's what field weakening does. It allows you to cancel out that back EMF so you can achieve a higher RPM, all right? So we're not going to go deep onto how field weakening works, but if it's working, you will be able to you know, exceed your top speed, all right? Now, it's not going to give you a miracle top speed, but if you have field weakening working and your top speed was 60 miles an hour, if your field weakening is working, you might hit 65 miles an hour. You're not going to do nothing crazy like 90 or 100, but yeah, you might get 5 more miles per hour, maybe even 10 if you have some good field weakening, but not more than that. Well, it depends on how much power you have and your voltage. But you know, like I said, on 72 volts, 100 amps, yeah, you got field weakening working, you might see 65 instead of 60. All right, so do a test run with no field weakening, then start off by, you know, with a little bit of field weakening. Do 10 amps, or if yours is in percentage, do 10%. Then see what your top speed is. If you're getting a little more, then, you know, gradually increase your field weakening. As long as you're seeing a difference, it's obviously it's effective. However, you might reach a point where you turn your field weakening up too much and it's exceeding, you know, the power of your battery. Then it's going to start working. Then you're back to your 60 miles an hour. So you know you're going to have to dial that field weakening back down. Now, you want to run everything at max, then you want to make sure you have a battery capable of a high discharge rate. And that's going to be a battery with a high amp hour and a high peak, you know, because all that goes hand in hand. How many cells that are in parallel is always going to increase the size of your battery's capacity, which is always going to increase your range, increase your discharge rate, and how many amps you can deliver to your controller. All right, so everybody knows Myla cells are like 45 amp cells. So, you know, you get a 10p Myla cell pack, you got some amps. You got 450 amps. You know, at that point, you can run a Saviton 72 150 or 200 wide open at 200 DC line amps. Turn the flux weakening in Savitons up to 50 amps, and that's 250 amps. You got plenty of amps to handle your field weakening and your phase amps, your DC line amps. You know, I'm not really speaking about phase amps because we're talking about the DC line amps, the amps coming from your battery. All right, now obviously the more line amps, the more phase amps you can turn your controller up to. But obviously, if we're talking about the max, we're talking about the maximum phase amps of whatever your controller is. If it's 350 or Saviton 72 150, then that's with the phase amps all the way up, and the DC line amps all the way up to 150 amps. All right, but like I said, the average battery with 150 amp BMS that has 18 650s in it is not going to deliver 150 DC line amps and 50 amps for the field weakening. So you're going to have to dial back. Like I said, turn your DC line amps back to 100, turn your field weakening up to 50 amps if you want to run it at max, and then you got enough. Now, like I said, that at that point you're going to have a high top speed, but because you've turned your amps back, you're not going to have as much acceleration. You know, you're going to lose a little bit of acceleration. Now, like you get a big battery, you can keep all that. I'm just telling you that if you don't have the battery, you're going to have to turn something back. All right, so that is how you test that field weakening. You know, start off with no field weakening, and then start off with small increments. And you know, this is like science experiments. You're going to have to do trial and error. You're going to have to do testing and see, you know. And remember that your voltage is going to be dropping if you don't have a big pack while you're doing these tests. So you always want to try to do it with a full battery, you know. All right, anyway, those are just some tips. Hope that helps. Like I said in the beginning, you know, I couldn't get past 85 miles per hour, which is like the maximum speed you can do on 72 volts with a lot of watts and a lot of amps, you know. Then I realized I wasn't getting field weakening, and you know, eventually I worked that out, and I can get past that little roadblock. But anyway, that's it. Take it easy, take care. That's a high-speed tip from me. And you know, I'm sure there's a lot of other channels out there a lot more popular than mine, but I guarantee you my channel is going to be the channel where you get the most information, and even where those popular channels come to get some real information, because that's what I'm giving out, real information. Deuces.